Welcome to tonight's special meeting of the Port Phillip City Council. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners of this land, the people of the Kulin Nations. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present. We acknowledge and uphold their continued relationship with this land. This meeting is a special meeting to consider the Council Plan and Budget 2024 to 25. Members of the public are welcome to attend the meeting, and welcome to those in the gallery and online. However, in accordance with Council's governance rules, there is no provision to ask questions or make submissions. Council or community engagement on the Council Plan and Budget 2024-25 was held from 18th April to 13th May 2024. Council also heard feedback on the Council Plan and Budget from the community at the special Council meeting on the 14th of May 2024. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid style and is streamed via Council's webcast page and Facebook Live. Streams and recordings of Council meetings are copyrighted and cannot be altered, reproduced, or republished without the permission of Council. If we experience any technical difficulties this evening, we will adjourn the meeting for a short time to resolve the issue. First item is apologies. Councillors, do we have any apologies? I note that we have received an apology from Councillor Baxter. So that's the one. Okay. On to declarations of conflicts of interest. Does anyone have a conflict of interest in a matter being discussed at tonight's meeting? No. On to presentation of reports. Councillors, we have one item for consideration this evening, being item 3.1, Council Plan 2021 to 2031, Year 4, Municipal Health and Wellbeing Plan, Financial Plan, Revenue and Rating Plan, and Budget 2024 to 25 adoption. Long title. We're going to do this in 8 parts tonight. So, councillors, you have a copy of how we're breaking it down, just to let everyone in the room and online know that each part will look for questions of the officers. We'll look for a mover and seconder. We'll have the debate, and then it may be in one vote or multiple votes. Then we'll go to the next section and repeat that same process. All right. Let's start with part 1. Councillors, are there any questions of the officers in relation to part 1? The general topic here is differential rates. No questions? All right, I'm looking for a mover. Councillor Bond to move. Yeah, okay. Noting there are officers' amendments from what was released in the pack, and that's shown on screen, either crossed out or red lighting or red highlighting. Councillor Bond has moved this. Who would like to second it? Councillor Martin. All right, Councillor Bond, would you like to speak to it?
Just briefly, I'll hopefully speak just once tonight. This is probably the most important section in the budget here tonight because it contains all the information or the new differential rates on derelict land, unactivated retail land and vacant land that we are introducing. This is something I know I've been looking at for many, many years, and I think I said this in chambers before. Once I remember having a conversation with Louise about this, Councillor Crawford about this, before she was even a councillor, and that's at least 8 years ago, on the ability to introduce these, and we were never able to do it because we had a very different rating system here. Since we changed our rating system 12 months ago, we now have the ability to do this, and I think this will be a very, very good thing for our city because it will stimulate some activity on many of the eyesore vacant blocks of land, the eyesore derelict lands, and most importantly, the eyesore abandoned or unoccupied or vacant shops on many of our high streets. And we haven't even introduced this. We vote on this hopefully in about 5 or 10 minutes once everyone's finishes speaking. And we have already seen people rent out their shops, fill their shops, sign lease agreements, sign up to Council's Ackland Street renewal program, just with talk of this in the community without actually bringing it in. So just talking about it has stimulated exactly what we want to see happen with these blocks of land. People are even submitting planning applications because they have a block of land that they've sat on for many years and not done anything with. So, you know, this is what we wanted to see happen with these locations. It's a very important change to our city, and I very, very strongly support it. And that's probably the highlight of this section. I know a lot of work's gone into this, but that's the major change we're bringing in with this budget adoption for next year, and we are already seeing it working before we even introduce it. So I think that all indications are that this is going to be a stunning success and have the impact on our high streets that we hope it will have an impact on those blights of sites at Waterfront Place and on Bay Street, the ones we all know about that have just sat empty shells and a real detriment to these streets just with their lack of activity and the way they negatively impact those streets. So I think this is going to be great. I urge my fellow councillors to support this change.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Councillor Martin?
Can I echo what my colleague Councillor Bond has said? And for many, many years I've spent many of my waking hours in the Port Melbourne area, and one of the main topics of conversation has been the number of either derelict sites, unactivated sites, not so much unactivated shop fronts, but they're more in the St Kilda area. And when 4 years ago I decided to run for council, one of the first things people would ask, what are you going to do about site X or site Y? And Councillor Bond has alluded to that. We weren't really in a position to do a whole lot, but now that we have a new system of rating where we can apply differential rating, we have the opportunity to provide some incentive for those people who have left their land go to rack and ruin for a number of times, whether it's derelict land, whether it's vacant land, or whether it's unactivated retail land. So we have a reasonably strong incentive for them to try and activate those sites. And as Councillor Bond has mentioned, we've already noted it in the last few weeks. Over 10% of the sites that we've written to suggesting that they may be included in this rate have already done something about activating their sites. Now, since the motion was circulated, there are a couple of changes that the officers have made, which I think are excellent changes. And the first one is to come up with a definition for vacant land. So for those of you in the gallery who probably haven't seen this, it's up on the screen. You might be able to read it, or at least the first 3 lines of it are appearing at the moment. The definition for vacant land be amended to include an exemption for properties in the financial year after approval at frame stage has been provided in accordance with the building permit issued, and it goes on. In other words, if someone started to activate their land, we're saying you don't have to have the development fully completed, but if this motion is passed, or if this particular clause is passed, then once you've started to activate your land and bring it to a reasonable stage, then you will not be liable to pay any additional rate. And lastly, there's another inclusion there, which is 3.3.5, inclusion of an internal process to manage objections to classification of land in addition to the statutory process. If people feel that they've been unjustly targeted by the council, they have an opportunity to appeal to the council and have their rate reviewed. And last but not least, I was speaking to one of the ratepayers in Port Melbourne who rang me, someone who has a block of land that's kept in reasonably neat condition, and was arguing that perhaps he should be exempted. I'm not suggesting that we have an exemption at this stage, as we're still identifying properties, but I'd like to just foreshadow that I'll be asking my fellow councillors and officers to consider whether or not we should look at the potential for activating vacant land that's in a good position. We'd need to look at what the legal costs would be involved, what actions would be required to impart of the landowner. But if that could be done successfully, we may well be in a position where we can provide a rebate to those people who've got vacant land and are prepared to have it activated so it adds to the improvement of community amenity. But I'll leave that to my officers. I'll leave that to my colleague councillors and officers to discuss further down the track. So just at the moment, only too pleased to second this motion, and I particularly support the officers for helping us with these 2 additional clauses.
Thank you. Who would like to speak to it next? No. Okay, Councillor Niagui.
Yeah, I'm really happy to see us going down this road. There's obviously a lot in this particular motion, but probably the thing that's of note is the changes to have a differential rate for derelict, unactivated retail and vacant land. It's certainly something that a number of people, many people I would say actually, have complained to me over the years, and conversations I've had with people. There are a lot of prominent sites that people can name. I think when we're in a housing crisis, when we have certain really significant challenges on our high streets and elsewhere, municipality, to enable us to have this lever through the rates to disincentivise these types of land is certainly something I think will have a really positive impact. And it's been sort of surprising actually the number of people who have, after many years of inactivity, have suddenly found themselves doing something simply because we've proposed this change, and I hope that will continue once it's introduced. We can't fix every problem on the high streets, and I think council over a number of years have done a lot of work especially in St Kilda, to deal with issues on high streets. And at times, unfortunately, we have found ourselves pushing up against landlords who are not as interested as we are in the health of the street. And I think this is not a magic bullet, but it certainly is a disincentive. It's a disincentive to those who think they can just sit on land and leave it empty or derelict or unactivated. Ultimately, that does have a profound impact on the rest of our community, and I hope we'll continue to see change and that these categories of rates will be very rarely used. I will note that there was the small change that Councillor Martin noted about the framing stage. I'm not super thrilled that this is being included. I will support it tonight, and I hopefully won't find ourselves in a situation where people are abusing this. I'm hopeful that when people get to that framing stage in their build that they do actually continue to completion. If we find ourselves in a situation years down the track where people have used this as a loophole to build up to a certain stage in their project and then cease activity, because there are certainly examples around of construction sites that have kind of ground to a halt for not the best of reasons, we might need to revisit it. But I'm hopeful that won't be the case and that this hurdle will be just one of many as people speedily get to the end of their project and get their land active again.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking to the item? Otherwise, I will. Every site definitely has a story, and we know that some of these ones feel like they should be given an exception, and I'm pleased to see that there will be the inclusion of an internal process to review if anybody needs to bring it to our attention through an appeal. But we've received criticism that this is anti-business. But an empty shop, a derelict site, those are not businesses. And a vacant site is not a business. But what is a business is often what's next to it, or residents that is trying to do their best and they're being held back. I think this is a good opportunity. We don't have it maybe 100% right, but definitely down a track that we will learn and amend as we go. I think the framing stage part is actually very important, because if it had been at occupancy, that's a lot longer down the road. But to get to framing stage, that's an opportunity where a building surveyor has come in, checked it off through a different process. Before that, you've demolished, you've done your grading, you've put your slab down with your pipes in it, you're framing. You're pretty committed to the project at the point when you get that framing inspection. So it's clear evidence that you are well on your way, but things do happen, and it will review how successful that is. I will be supporting, I think, nearly everything on here tonight. Anybody else want to speak to this? This is your one opportunity to speak to everything in part one. Councillor Crawford?
Until Councillor Bond had mentioned that the other week that I'd rang you, I'd forgotten that. But it was one of the reasons I ran for council, because I was working on Fitzroy Street at that time, and that was, it obviously, yeah.
No side conversations, please. Let's keep going, Councillor Crawford.
We could see at that point in time what unactivated retail was doing to the street. I mean, obviously there are many factors. So I called him to ask, what could we do about rates? Now, I didn't know anything about council or rates or really understand anything, but I did decide to run for council for a number of reasons. And then when I first got on council, we tried to save the Greyhound Hotel, and we failed, and that site has sat there built on with, I don't even know if the planning permit has fallen through, or not. I don't know where it even sits now, but it's 8 years where there could have been houses built activating for our street. So this is an imperfect policy, like all policies. Hopefully it will have the intended effect. As we said, it's already starting to do that. We have done a lot of carrots, especially in unactivated retail, so this is the stick, and it's designed to be the stick. And I think this council is prepared to wear that. I know there has been some discussion that some people are concerned about, or some councillors are concerned about some of the landowners or business owners, but I actually think this is the stick and we need to stand by it. There is a future council. You can always review these differential rates every year, so there's an opportunity, see what works, see what doesn't. I do want to remind fellow councillors that if we were to not pass these, what we've gone out to, that would be an extra $1 million of rates that would go back on residents, and some of it commercial, but the majority of it, 741k, would go back onto residents. So this is designed to, one, take a little bit of pressure off residents, but mainly to get those properties owners who have not been doing the right thing around their properties to take action. So I'm hoping you will support it.
Thank you. Other councillors speaking to the item? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With regards to vacant land, we have no vacant land problem in this municipality. There's no land banking. There's no housing crisis going to be solved in this community by 60-something properties being left undeveloped. Local government should not be getting involved in telling people when or how to develop, their land. People have invested in buying this land. That's their freedom to do that investment and own it, and they shouldn't have to be told that they immediately have to develop it. They could have bought it and now saving up to actually build on it. They might need to save for 5 years. How is that our business to be then telling them what to do with their asset? So I don't support that, and a 300% retrospective addition to their rates I don't believe is warranted, because we don't actually have a problem with vacant land. In regards to unactivated retail, there are a few landlords who possibly haven't done the right thing in trying to rent their properties, but I don't believe that should result in penalising the rest of them. Whether a retail landlord signs up to council's activation, a tenancy program is not a justification that they're not trying hard enough. In fact, it could well be asked by the landlords, what is council doing to clean up some of these challenged streets? As council, we have tried to do a lot, but hasn't made much difference. Carlisle Street, Fitzroy Street, they're possibly worse than when I started in council. And if you're a landlord trying to get a tenant in these uninviting high streets, you would probably be asking us, how is this fair given what they're trying to deal with? Not to mention the landscape for retail. That's changed significantly. Online shopping, that's totally changed the retail space. So there are other reasons as well that landlords can be struggling to get tenants. I don't think if you asked many people would they take out a lease on Fitzroy Street at the moment, the answer would probably be no. So now we want to penalise them with 400% rates. So I don't support the argument that it's okay to bring in unfair policies that might save others on their rates, but that's a justification for bringing in a policy that isn't actually, in my opinion, appropriate. There's a high level of subjectivity left to council officers here to determine this. That's a major concern of mine. I appreciate the fact that there is an internal process, but how that will be implemented is not entirely clear to me. And I'm convinced there will be many unintended consequences of these policies for the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking to it? Councillor Sirikoff.
Thank you, Mayor. So this does change the landscape a bit when we're introducing differentials, and it was a good thing that we did introduce differentials last year, because that enabled us to do things regarding industrial, commercial and residential. So that was a really good move for council. But this is now taking the next step, and to be doing differentials now when we kind of get down to the nitty-gritty of it could have unintended consequences, and those consequences when we really don't know what the economic viability is for some landowners or business owners. On vacant land, council already has in place infringements for property owners who do not maintain their vacant land. If there's grass growing extensively high or rubbish is dumped on their land, the landowner has to maintain the property for the safety and amenity of the neighbourhood. And if they do this, then they tick the box and everything's okay in the area. In the current economic environment with high inflation, high interest rates, long planning approvals and the high construction costs or any other personal constraints that might be on one's life, landowners might not have currently the means or funds to build on the land that they've purchased. I do not see that council should be punishing landowners with extra taxes because they simply own vacant land. And this would be on top of state government taxes if you own more than one property. These differential rating on vacant land I see as an unnecessary layer of bureaucracy and another administration cost and waste of time for council for a relatively small number of properties compared to the total number of dwellings across the whole municipality. For unactivated retail land, we all remember the impact of what COVID had on us and the changes that it had on and downturn of the business on our high streets. That was a terrible thing. During the COVID pandemic, one of the 5 reasons we could leave our home was to shop for food and other essentials. So many cafes and retail stores stopped operating and shut their doors because they just didn't have the business. We had to stay home, or we're only allowed to leave home because of exercise or if we needed to go to medical appointments or go to work. So now, coming out of COVID, those who are interested in starting a retail or hospitality shop face rising costs to open up to the public. They now face higher costs for materials to sell due to inflation, higher wages, higher superannuation to pay staff, higher insurance, and also competing with goods now sold online more than what we've ever seen before. And also, we're also going through a collapse in disposable income. Shop tenants also have to deal with antisocial behaviour on some of our high streets. We do have our hard-working local law staff to deal with antisocial behaviour, but they can't be there 24 hours a day. We don't have the same powers as the police to make sure our streets are safe for people who want to shop on those streets. These factors are not making it easy for landlords to attract tenants to invest in a shopping precinct. Council has invested in the renewal of Fitzroy Street and more recently $200,000 on Ackland Street to attract businesses. We have seen some improvements and some people taking up shops, and some have also left at the same time. So what we have here is a situation where we are, I don't see that we should be taking a punitive move to increase rates for unactivated retail when there are current adverse social and economic factors to consider, which would be a deterrence for prospective tenants to take a gamble to invest. As much as I would very much love to see all the shops activated and vibrant, to introduce an unactivated retail land differential rating is bad timing at the moment and overreaching during these hard economic times. The only one that I'm really in favour of is derelict land differential rating. Those buildings which are in a really terrible state, they're falling apart, they're like bomb sites, really need to be cleaned up. These ones also can attract antisocial behaviour, which inherently negatively impact the safety and amenity of the neighbouring people living close by in the neighbourhood. We've had lots of cases where some residents fear for where people have occupied these sites which are not fit to live in and have had to call on local laws to clear them out. So I'll be voting appropriately when the time comes tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Pearl.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm very happy to support differential rating here. Our high streets are very mixed at the moment. We have some of the best high streets in Melbourne, particularly Elwood and Albert Park. And Councillor Sirikoff, you're focusing more on the traders. This is not a tax on the traders. As soon as a trader goes into that site, the tax effectively evaporates. Our businesses will not be carrying the burden of this tax. High taxes are not good for growth and they're not good for innovation, and we all know that. And I got my lessons in capitalism from the great Lee Kuan Yew, who taught us very clearly that you should incentivise people to do things that lift productivity, that increase wealth and increase prosperity, and make sure that that is dispersed as equally as possible, and you disincentivise, in his words, stupidity. I think there's an element of irrationality around derelict properties across our city that have sat there in some cases for up to a decade with absolutely nothing going on there. No social conscience, no community spirit, and certainly no action on their construction sites. And some of these are key sites on our foreshore and on our high streets. And we need to support the landowners that sit around those sites and the traders that sit on those sites to beautify the street and make sure it's a warm, safe and inviting place for people to come to. Vacant shop owners, to my shock and dismay, when you sit and talk to some of them, they're not feeling it. In many cases, I wouldn't call them land banking because they're not, but there's certainly no incentive for these people to put any trader in that their property, and certainly one that is any discount to the previous rent they may have been receiving well before COVID. That was a huge surprise to me. And on vacant land, it's a dirty little secret that many inner city suburbs are going backwards in population. And it's unfathomable. When I got on council 8 years ago, I haven't got the exact number I pull out, but it was well over a population growth estimate in current terms of over 30,000. I think it was 38,000. We're going backwards. Albert Park is going backwards. Port Melbourne is going sideways. Do we have a rampant vacant land problem across our city? No, we don't. Do we have lots of plots of vacant land that have been vacant for a very long time that need to be activated with people living on them? Absolutely we do. And we need to provide every single incentive through a efficient planning process, good town planning outcomes and good yield that's allowed to be constructed on those sites to ensure that we get more houses and more people living in our municipality. And to Councillor Martin's idea, I have deep concerns about giving people rate offsets for activation of land. I went to the Port Melbourne Historical Society last night. Where are you going with this, Marcus? But I sat there and I saw a group of volunteers that give hundreds, if not thousands of hours of volunteer time. They don't get any discount on their rates bill. None whatsoever, nor would they have the gall to ask for it. So I don't see why we should be giving rates discounts to people that don't want to do effectively what I consider is the right and productive thing for our city and our future of our city, our kids, our grandchildren, to make sure that they have safe streets with good sound amenity, affordable places to live in our city, and shops that are activated, which means employment. It means a larger local economy, it means more jobs, and it means more people in our city and more economic development. And that is the most capitalistic way to view things. We want a bigger pie, we want a bigger economy, and this is one way in which our city can do it. Support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Bond, do you want to close?
Yeah, just to say very, very clearly that anyone who talks about impact on traders of these three new rates, differential rates, anyone that talks about the cost of doing business to an existing business, anyone that talks about staff wages going up and materials going up and all those other things that are going up that are impacting existing businesses has just failed to grasp what we're doing here. This is a differential rate on vacant retail lands, differential rate on derelict buildings. If you're currently operating a business in these sites, you don't pay it. It's as simple as that. And anyone that talks about the cost to an existing business or the cost to an existing shop or the cost to an existing trader just isn't understanding what we're doing here. Close by saying this had 80% plus support on our consultation with the community. 80% plus people support what we're doing here, including, I might add, 100% support from the business members on the business advisory group and 100% support from our four traders communities who know the impact that empty shops are having on their businesses in their high streets. They're our strongest supporters of this. So some of the arguments against this tonight just don't stack up as far as I'm concerned, and I'll leave it there.
Thank you. All right, everyone's had an opportunity to speak. We're now going to go to the votes. There are 6 votes in this part 1. Nothing will be under division unless it's called. All right, so the first part is 3.1 and 3.2, including the subsections of 3.2. Everyone clear with that? Yes? The next vote will start with 3.3. Got it? All right. All those in favour of 3.1 and 3.2? All those against? Sorry, I had a late hand there. Was that a vote for or against? Yeah, okay, that's carried unanimous. Thank you. All right, part 2 is item 3.3 with 3.3.1 attached to it. Okay? So, all those in favour of derelict land being included? Thank you, that's carried unanimous. All right, vote 3 is for 3.3.2, which is the unactivated retail land. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried.
Division required.
Okay, all those in favour? Keep your hand up, please. Bond, Martin, Pearl, Consolo, Niagri, Crawford. All those against? Clark and Sirikoff. That's carried.
No.
Did we record who called the division? I don't recall that. We do? Well, never noted that. Who called the division? Bond. Huh? All right, I'm going to give it to Bond. Thank you for noting that. Okay, now the fourth vote, so that was carried. The fourth vote is for 3.3.3, vacant land. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried.
Division required.
Okay. Bond called that. So all those for? Bond, Martin, Pearl, Niagri, and Crawford. Against is, sorry, I wrote the records for it. Against. Hands up. So Sirikoff, Consolo, and Clark. That's carried. Okay, thank you. Now the fifth vote in this section is 3.3.4. This is the definition of vacant land. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. All right, now sixth vote in this section, last one for the section, is 3.3.5 for the inclusion of internal process. All those in favour? That's carried. All those against? Did you not vote? Do you want? Let's do it again. All those in favour? We're voting in. All in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. We got 16 votes tonight. I'll give you the head total now. But we've 6 down, so we're well on our way. Okay, fresh start again, part 2. This is another opportunity to ask questions. Another opportunity. Another opportunity to debate, and we'll look for a mover and seconder. And we only have one vote on this section. All right, questions of the officers in relation to the report?
Yeah, my question is in relation to the rates notice. I'm wondering if we could get 2 separate invoices created for the council rates and the enormous ballooning state government rates. So it's very clear about who's charging what in terms of local government versus the greedy state government. Sorry, withdraw greedy state government to state government.
Thank you for the drawing. Who am I referring to? Peter?
Through you, Matt. Could you repeat the question? Sorry.
You really want me to?
I do want to.
How do we separate out council charges versus state government charges? Well, and by that I mean, technically I think council charges are state government charges, but rates charges levied by council versus fire service levies and other charges, which in most cases are now greater than council charges. How do we separate them out? And is it possible to put them on 2 separate invoices so people are very clear about who's charging them what?
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mayor. Council is the collection agent for both fire levy and also our rates and charges. They are disclosed in our rates notice. We do separate them within separate lines in the rates notice, but it is my understanding that we cannot separate them in 2 different rates notices. I don't think we have the legislation to do that. However, we can provide information in both the front section and the back section of the rates notice to highlight what are the key changes or the legislative information required.
Thank you. Clarifying question. You said that we're the collection agency for both, but we do not keep the fire safety or fire levy, correct?
Through you, Mayor, that's correct. We have to remit all payments relating to fire levies, including any late payments interest for fire levy as well. So that would have to be remitted to the State Revenue Office. So Council does not get any 1 cent from it.
Thank you. Councillor Pearl?
And what's the average increase on the fire service levy this year? In percentage terms, obviously.
It's the increase is it's a little bit hard to just give you an average because it's subject to many factors, including property type, the property value. But what I can say is that the increase, generally speaking, is looking like at least 50% to 150% of our rates increase in 24-25. Yeah, it's hard to give you a exact number or even an average, but that's the kind of range I can give you.
Thank you. Any further questions? No? All right. Then we're looking for a mover. Okay, Councillor Bond and Councillor Niagara to second. All right, Councillor Bond, would you like to start the debate?
If this was an episode of Friends, this part would be known as the one where we get stuck into the state government for putting their fees up. Look, it is what it is. If we don't set this amount, we just have to pass it on. So let's vote on this and get back to the bit we do have a say in.
Thank you. Councillor Niagara?
Yeah, I concur with Councillor Bond, except I don't really feel like digging into the state government. I like that our fire services are appropriately funded. So I think any attack there is probably a bit cheap. I do query why there's been what seems to be a bit of a delay in terms of increasing it over the last few years. I would note with COVID, many people were keen for government across the board to do sort of deferrals. So it looks like, we've deferred for a little while and now we're trying to catch up. But that said, this is important that we pass it on. There'll always be people that blame council. That's just is what it is. But I think it's important that we properly fund our fire service and note that that's what this levy is for. It's not for bureaucrats in Spring Street. This is actually for the fire services.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Pearl?
In a former life, having insured billions of dollars of forestry, I'm not sure our fire services is fully funded, and I'm sure the Fire Services Union? Firefighters Union? Would agree with you either. United Firefighters Union, sorry. Would agree with that either based on their public statements. So it's an interesting one, but let's not go down that rabbit hole. But the point is, here you have a state government that's raising its component taxes by 50 to 150%. That's enormous. So they hold us to a standard of capping. I think the highest rate cap since I've been on council allowable was 3.75, 3.5%. Forgive me if I'm wrong. Certainly wasn't 150% or 50%. And the reason this section deeply impacts us is we're the ones that cops the phone call because no one itemises their rates bill. Many people do itemise their rates bill, but most people see that they got charged $3,000 last year and that this year they could be being charged $3,950 or $4,500. That's a substantial increase when people least expect it. And we cop the brunt of that unfairly, and a lot of people, can't afford that increase at the moment, and it's deeply sad. But councillors, we're the ones that are going to have to front up and explain to people constantly about the rate capping environment that we sit under and the budget constraints that we adhere to when we have a government that doesn't do the same thing.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking to this item? Councillor Crawford?
I'm happy to support this section given, I don't know if anyone's actually had fires at their place and that waiting that minutes till the fire service gets there. I'd like to make sure that it can operate fully, noting that there are some areas that have CFA and I'd hate to be living in one of those where we don't have that. Having said that, I do think that it is important in our rates notice to try to differentiate as much that the bigger growth in cost for their overall bill is not being charged by council. There is obviously the much longer and bigger conversation to be had with both state and federal governments about how to appropriately fund local government for sustainability and to deliver the services and infrastructure that our community expects. And I know there's a federal inquiry going into it now, and I think that is the much bigger, longer discussion, and it's happening around the world, so that's a separate thing. But I'm happy to support, obviously, the fire levy now to make sure people in that crisis moment gets fire, people turning up at their door. But yes, I'm happy to have that further discussion about how do we appropriately fund local government with the other levels of government.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking to it? Otherwise, let's go to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. All right, on to part 3. This is 3.5. Are there any questions of the officers in relation to the item? No. All right, I'm looking for a mover. Councillor Martin and a seconder. Councillor Bond. All right, Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to it?
Briefly, Mayor. I've spent the last few months reading some marvellous submissions where there are lots of members of our community who'd like funding for a number of very, very worthwhile causes. And I've also read some submissions that I thought were perhaps not quite as worthy. Having said that, when we've been trying to put our budget together, it's very, very difficult to fund even some of those requests under the relatively tight financial regime that we've got to work with, and we need to be fiscally responsible. We can't afford to be spending outside our means. In the middle of all this, the maximum rate cap that we're allowed under the state government is 2.75%, and if we took a rate increase of anywhere less than that, we'd have to make significant cuts to the budget, which is already a pretty lean and mean budget. And I thank all of my council colleagues as we put the draft budget together. I think we've all been very professional in making sure that we've tried to give every submission appropriate attention, and then try and make decisions about what we can fit in under the rates cap. I do note that had our rates cap last year been at the allowed maximum rather than being 0.75% below it, we would have had a little more money to play with. We might just have been in a position where we could have funded a couple more of the excellent suggestions that have come from our community. But given that we have a rates cap that we're not allowed to spend above it, I think that's eminently reasonable that we accept the 2.75% cap and frame our budget within the limits, the fiscally responsible limits that are available to us.
Thank you. Councillor Bond, would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, last year our rates rise was a voluntary 2.7% when the rates cap was 3.5. This year it's 2.75%, so we were just getting in a year early. I noticed this isn't a voluntary 2.75, it's an involuntary. This is our cap this year, it's what we have to deal with. I would really love to have had a zero rate rise here, but I would only do so if we as 9 councillors decided what it was we stopped spending the money on. I don't believe in this handball to officers and just say, you go away and find savings. It's our job as 9 councillors to find those savings. There wasn't anything come up that 9 of us would agree on, so therefore we really have no choice here but to go with the 2.75% rate rise. And if any of the 9 councillors here on this current council think they can get 5 votes to stop someone spending money or to cut some article or item of spending, by all means bring it to the councillor group at the earliest opportunity and we will discuss it, and we will quite happily support that being brought to the chambers and we vote on it. If we can save money at any time, I'm sure we'd all be willing to do that if we could find things we could all agree on. Unfortunately, there wasn't anything we were able to agree on to bring this rate rise down, so 2.75 is what we are passing here tonight.
Thank you. I'll go next. Today in the news it came out that inflation has surged to 4% in the year to May from 3.6. So when you look at 2.75, that's even farther apart. Every project we have is experiencing increases well above 2.75 or even 4%. It's very challenging right now to deliver for our community the things that we've put in our plan and are committed to. Also, the surplus that we're forecast is quite low. We're not in a good place to look anything else than taking the maximum rate rises here. I'm very proud, this is our last budget for this council term, that across the term we've been able to do different things. we call it the levers we can pull in our rating strategy. We've approached from many different angles. Last year, we were able to reduce the amount we were going to take on the rate rise. We've done the waste charge. We've done now differential rating. We're looking at a lot of different mechanisms to try to find the balance and looking at, because we understand that rates aren't people's favourite thing to pay. So I will be supporting this tonight. Anybody else speaking to the item? Councillor Pearl?
Just quickly, the 2.75 is well below inflation and is not a drastically large increase compared to what is going through the economy at the moment. I don't like increasing taxes and I don't support increasing rates, and I think I've done it twice since I've been on council. What I would say, councillors, is you deserve a very large pat on the back for the management of the balance sheet of the council. And I separate it out. I think we all have squabbles frequently over what I call the P&L, the profit and loss of the council, in terms of where we raise our money from and where we spend it. We all vary on that fairly starkly in many respects, and we squabble over it many times behind the scenes. Perhaps that's not the right word, but we have vigorous debates over it. But the balance sheet of the council, which ultimately we are significant custodians of, is in very good shape. And we haven't gone down the rabbit hole that lots of people told us to do 5 or 6 years ago of getting addicted to cheap debt, or good debt, as people like to call it. There is no such thing as good debt. It is the borrower is slave to the lender, and if we'd enslaved ourselves with debt 5, 6 years ago, we would have literally millions of dollars of increasing interest bills, which means we'd be contracting services to our community. And I almost was shocked yesterday when I was reading the financials of another council, and I thought, wow, it's the City of Yarra. And I thought, oh no, the City of Stonington's changed its name, perhaps to the City of Yarra, because there's over forward estimates $70 million in debt on their balance sheet, which is millions of dollars a year that their ratepayers are not getting in quality services, that are not getting in road maintenance. And 10 years down the track, no one remembers generally where that debt went. So we have done that together in this 4-year term, and it was done in the previous term, and it was done in the term before that. And it's an extraordinarily difficult thing to do. Not only haven't you dipped into debt, you have built reserves to then ensure that you are investing for the future. So nobody can come and sit here from any community group and say that this council hasn't made prudent decisions around the way it's allocated its capital and the priorities it's allocating them to. We have plenty of money in reserves in this council to invest in infrastructure. There's no reason in the foreseeable future this council will ever have to go and put more marble in a Big Four bank's foyer. That money now stays in our community and goes back to our community, and that's something you should all be enormously proud of in terms of the custodianship that you've done over the past 4 years of the balance sheet. We'll continue to debate where the profit and loss goes, but you should all be congratulated on doing a wonderful job of being custodians of the balance sheet. You've done well.
Thank you. Who would like to speak next? Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The fact that we're being asked to support a 2.75 increase in rates is disappointing. I have previously put up a request for or a motion for a freeze, which wasn't supported by fellow councillors. I'm made many comments on this every year, so I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time this year. However, as a council, we spend way too much money on many facets of it. As Councillor Bond has said, we don't agree on this, and many, as councillors sitting around this table, without being able to make sensible decisions on spending, it's our decisions that have led to the amount of money we spend. We haven't been able to reduce expenditure and provide the community with the ultimate cost of living saving, which is a rate freeze. It's probably even worse given the consideration of the cost of living pressures at the moment. And the next council will have no choice but to start looking at where they're going to start saving money, because, as it's been pointed out, there is no longer a surplus. When I started, we've had fluctuating surpluses and we've had some significant surpluses. That is now gone. And as been pointed out, the rate of inflation, the rates cap, this is a train crash that we're all sitting on and is going to come to the next council, that savings are going to have to be found whether people like it or not. Or we will find ourselves borrowing money for recurrent expenditure. So I won't be supporting the rate increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking to the item? Councillor Sirkov.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With this current economic situation we're all facing, the residents, both ratepayers and renters, are all dealing with the ongoing and compounding high cost of living. If rates go up, then there's certainty that the rents will also go up for those who are renting. Residents are having to deal with and juggle rising costs at every level. And those include mortgages and rents, increasing food bills at the supermarket, medical bills, increasing utility and heating bills that we hear about almost every day now when we're talking about the energy situation at both state and federal levels. There are also the increasing skyrocketing increases for insurance premiums for health. You've got a vehicle, home and property. Some insurance is increasing by 30%, a whopping 30%, and this can be on any of these premiums of the areas I've just named. There are also now more and more issues where people are having to drop their insurances because of the rising costs. So people not only are facing the high cost of living crisis, they're now looking at an affordability crisis. What can they pay tomorrow, and what do they then drop and they're not going to pay in the near future? There are also more and more pressures on charities to help our residents who are struggling to pay their bills and put food on their table. Since November 2023, there has been a collapse in disposable income. Not only people thinking twice about going out for a meal, but there are those who used to give to charities who are now seeking help from charities, as reported in the ABC media last week. I cannot support an increase in the rates when there is still uncertainty from the RBA if interest rates are going to come down even by the end of the year. With these ongoing and increasing cost of living, with the ongoing cost of living crisis, we should be looking at tightening our belts, as our residents also having to do and have done over the past 4 years. Council will still collect $131 million through property rates, but they won't see that extra 2.75% going into 2024-25. So I think the council can survive it. I think the council can afford it. They need to find out where they don't need to be spending as much money so that everybody can pay their bills during these terrible economic times. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nogui.
I think it's our job to decide what we cut. But maybe I'm wrong. I think it's our job as councillors to decide. And I think we could have done. Look, I mean, I haven't been on council the whole time, so I didn't get to go through the delights of the cost review. Though I did read many of the notes, and there's a lack of consensus among councillors around what to cut. But the reality is, every year now we are in a situation where we're basically playing musical chairs, and there's a couple less chairs. And I think in that situation, to choose to take even more chairs off the dance floor, when we know that means that will be passed on to our community in terms of cut services, to me is the definition of insanity. I think if people can point to things I think are genuinely unreasonable spending, please do. I can point to some. I'm outraged that we're spending $500,000 on CCTV in this budget. We are spending money that the state government should spend, but there it is. And I lost that debate among councillors, and we all have things that we debate and disagree on. But ultimately, if we don't have the ability to do the hard yards and cut things, then we have to find a way to pay for them. That is what responsible government does. And we have to acknowledge ultimately that even with this 2.75% rate increase, we are falling behind inflation. That's why I say we have less chairs every single year. And that's pretty scary. It's scary because it means that we have a really restricted revenue environment going forward. And look, Councillor Pearl's right. We are in a better position than a number of councils in Victoria. We don't have lots of debt. But we do have lots of community infrastructure and assets that are in need of investment that are not getting that investment. I think what I see over the next 4 years, and I say it to people all the time, is that things are going to get tighter, things are going to get deferred, and I hope and pray we can find ways to prevent service reductions. But it's sort of a scary world looking forward, and I think that's why we have to, unless we are willing to make the difficult decision of cutting something, until such time that council's going to do that, we have to take on the full rate increase. And if someone has a suggestion for ways we can cut things to meet a 0% rate rise or some other kind of rate rise, well, that's great, but I don't see any of those proposals on the table. I hear a lot of conjecture about it, but we sit in the same meetings, the 9 of us, and we don't find agreement on where to cut things. So until such time that we do, we need to keep raising revenue to pay for all the various services that our community use and rely on. The vast bulk of what we do, the vast bulk of our community agree with. There's always going to be things around the margins that they don't, but that's not, by and large, the majority of what we spend our money on. So I encourage my colleagues to be responsible and reasonable and support this, unless they're willing to cut 2.5% of our spending.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking to the item? Councillor Crawford?
I just want to put on the table that we have one of the most generous financial assistance programs for our rates in the state and for pensioners, and we really genuinely want to help people who are in need. So if that is you, there is plenty of opportunity to talk to our team, and we will do our best to provide some rate relief if you are genuinely in need. There is a difference between having to pay rates and not wanting to, and genuine need. And I will be straight with people. There have been lots of conversations I've had over the years with people who have multiple properties because they tell me that their rates are lower in a different municipality. That is not the same as not being able to put food on the table. So if you are in genuine financial trouble and you need deferral or a discount or whatever it is, please come and talk to us. But there is a difference between your wealth building and our responsibility as councillors to actually provide services and infrastructure for this entire community. There is a difference in that. And if you have multiple properties, that is fantastic, but it is not the sole responsibility of council to manage that. We actually need to manage all of the 150 services and the various infrastructure that we provide our community. Interestingly enough, you know, there's just been a little bit of discussion about how renters will do it the hardest. And I have to say there's not one measure in here to directly help renters. So if that's what councillors are concerned about, then shame on us for not including anything. So I think we have to let's talk about hypocrisy and let's talk about reality. No one likes paying rates or taxes or anything, but it is our social compact that we make in order to fund a functional, livable, wonderful society, and we in Port Phillip are luckier than most. I don't know the level of mortgage stress here, and I know there are a number, but I think it was like 1 in 4 people in, I think, the Noble Park area. There were some stats. I don't have it here, but we are actually a very wealthy community in a lot of ways. So again, urge you, if you have financial difficulties, genuine ones, please come and talk to us. But let's not pretend that not wanting to pay rates or having to not go on that holiday this year is the same thing as financial difficulty.
Thank you. Would you like to close, Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't always agree with my colleague on my right, Councillor Pearl, but I thought he spoke very eloquently and talked about the responsibility that the 9 councillors around this table have shown. The 10 councillors, because Councillor Yagi replaced Councillor Copsey in terms of our financial management. And 2 years ago, as has been alluded to, we went through a very exhaustive cost review program where we as councillors went through virtually every item of council spending to see if we could find agreement as to where there are areas that we could cut back, where there are areas where we could increase. really, really exhaustive and perhaps the most productive thing I've been involved in on this council. And as an aside, I hope that the next council goes through a similar exercise very early in its term so that it's also in a position to make decisions as fiscally responsible as the council that is sitting here at the moment. At the end of all of this process, we've come up with a budget that has got the barest of surpluses, perhaps the minimum surplus that we could have in order to make sure that we get being fiscally responsible. And even then, there are a number of us here who would have preferred to have been able to fund some additional very, very important measures in areas such as additional food, additional services to children, additional services to the arts and so on. But we had to cut our cloth according to the money available. If we'd taken the decision to have 2.75% less rate income, we'd have had to take a very, very large axe to our spending program, and we wouldn't have been in a position to consider virtually any of the submissions that our community put in at the same time. And I fear that within a year or two, the level of our services would have diminished so much that the councils would have been very, very unpopular. And those of you who are successful in being re-elected next year, if you'd been part of a budget that had taken a significant cut to council services, may have found you had a very, very short term in office. I think we've been very fiscally responsible. We've worked within the government constraints to come up with a budget which, although it doesn't have everything that I would personally prefer, I think is probably the best effort we could do, the best thing we could come up with under the circumstances, and with any less rates income we wouldn't have been able to do that. So I hope that we support this unanimously.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? All right, thank you. That's carried.
Division.
Okay, let's go back to that. All those for. Bond, Martin, Consolo, Niagri, and Crawford. All those against. Sirikoff, Pearl, Clark. That's carried. Thank you. All right, nearly halfway, basically halfway. On to part 4. So again, opportunity to ask questions, and we'll look for another mover and seconder and debate again. Any questions for the officer in relation to part 4? Let you look at your notes, and it'll be up on the screen if you need to see what we're talking about now. Okay, no questions. Looking for someone to move this. Councillor Bond and Councillor Crawford to second. Councillor Bond, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, I would. Happy to move this bit. Just been doing a little bit of searching about our neighbouring councils. We often hear that our rates are so much higher than everyone else's around us. So City of Melbourne, 200 million in debt. Yarra, 70 million in debt. Stonington, 60 million in debt. Glen Ira, 60 million in debt. Kingston, 25 million in debt, rising to 55 million next year. And City of Bayside ought to be commended. They're debt-free and receiving 5 million a year in interest income, which is a very similar to position that the one we're in. So we've got two councils have very, very healthy balance sheets, and the remainder all have a large amount of debt. So this very rarely gets mentioned when people make comparisons between councils in our local area. So something I just thought worth noting before we decide that we're about to collect $135 million in rate income. As I said earlier, I would love to have supported a zero rate rise budget, not put the rates up, but without someone naming what it is and the 9 of us deciding amongst ourselves, majority of 5 is all it takes, on what it is we're not going to spend, it would be irresponsible just to randomly support zero rate rises without us deciding as 9 councillors what it is we don't spend money on.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford?
We talk about money a lot, and yes, it all comes down to money, but what does the money mean? It means maternal health services, it means parks, it means a new sports oval at the Fisherman's Bend End, it means lots of new open space in St Kilda East and Balaclava, it means more trees planted, it means funding the Eco Centre, it means funding our arts organisations, and it means waste services, it means clean streets, clean beaches. This is what it translates to. So I think, you know, we have a quirk in our municipality because of the property types. which is a big deciding factor of your proportion of the rates that you will bear, that there are people that do have pay a higher proportion, and we have tried to even that out with the waste levy. But let's just get really clear. We are really lucky. 135 million does not go very far, and we have additional funding from parking and things like that, so that we actually provide the most amazing extent of childcare, early education, playgrounds, open spaces, dog parks, festivals, libraries. We have more toy libraries and more libraries than the average municipality. So I just think you can talk about money all the time, but these are all valued services or places by different individuals in our city, and we are really lucky to be in a position to provide this. So I'm very happy to support declares this budget for that amount.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking to this part? No? Councillor Bond, do you need to close? No? All right, let's go to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. All right, now we're on to Part 5. Part 5 has 2 votes. Just give me a heads up. Any questions? This is generally in relation to waste service charges, etc. Any questions of the officers? No? If not, I'm looking for someone to move this or something else. Who would like to move this? Councillor Crawford and Councillor Niagara to second. Thank you. Councillor Crawford, would you like to speak to it?
Over the last year, we have finally got to FOGO and expanded our waste services, and there are glass bins too at community points. So this goes to cover a lot of that. I would urge the state government that there is a huge levy for landfill that's sitting there that could go to councils to help in this transition to the fourth, and help make our waste education better. But yeah, happy to support this given that it is an expanded service and a service that's always improving, but yeah, happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Nyagri.
Yeah, I concur with everything Councillor Crawford said. I probably would just pull out quickly that we don't often talk about it, but I'm very excited that we've rolled out FOGO entirely now, and I think it's something that was really top priority for me when I ran for council, and I'm really glad to see we've finally done it. Something that residents in Port Phillip have been without for many, many years. I think that's very exciting. I think there's some serious challenges we're going to have in terms of the rollout of how we do glass, and it's likely that we won't be able to fund our communal glass collections as we're doing them at the moment through this charge, and that presents a challenge for us going forward. Look, there's a lot of different types of waste that get produced in our community that we don't have clear streams for in terms of curbside collection, and I think it's something that we need to keep finding ways to do, whether it be textiles, soft plastics, e-waste, paint. There's all kinds of different things, and we have some channels for some things. We've got some excellent services provided at our municipal depot, but not everything is covered yet. Not everything is necessarily convenient or easy for our residents to access. So there's a long way to go here, but it's good to see that rollout's complete, and then we've got for everyone now that sort of falls into most categories, the 3 bins, and hopefully we'll find a way to make the 4th service work going forward and be covered by this charge.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking to the item? Councillor Bond?
I won't be supporting 3.7.1 and 3.7.2 because I've never ever supported the rates charge whilst it's been an item in our city. I don't believe we should have a separate charge in order to pay for the collection of our waste. I very strongly believe that that's what our rates are for, is to pay for these services, not to spend on other things, and then we introduce a separate rate charge in order to collect the waste and things. So I will continue my long-held practice of voting against the weight charge, and hopefully Councillor Pearl votes against it as well, and he will continue his long-held practice of voting against this also. I think it's just down to 2 last year. It'll probably be down to 2 again this year. So thank you for staying the course.
All right. Any other councillors speaking to the item? Councillor Pearl.
To respond to that, just want to support the waste. No, it's not happening. No, but I was wrong when we put the waste charge in place, the bin tax, many people call it. But I was wrong because I said that it would be gouged and there would be enormous percentage increases above the rates cap. and I admit I was wrong on that, but I still don't trust whoever's sitting in these chairs in the next 4 years to make prudent decisions as you all have, not to ensure there's not excessive increases in the waste charge. And if you really support lower rates, you'll definitely vote against a separate waste charge and the potential risk that poses to ratepayers across the city. So, yes, there was only 2 councillors that opposed the bin tax or the waste charge, and I'm still one of them.
All right, Councillor Sirikoff.
The unfortunate situation last year when we did bring in the differentiating rating system is that the waste charge couldn't be separated out from the differential. We requested if they could be separated out and voted on separately, but they came hand in hand.
Point of order.
What's point order?
53 Part E, an error of fact, it was voted on separately because myself and Councillor Pell voted on it separately.
Given that they've said they voted separately, I'm going to have to go with that without having the minutes in front of me. I'm sorry. Keep going, though, in your speech.
So given that this year we do have it separated out, I'm not supportive of the waste charge. Thank you.
Anyone else speaking to the item? Otherwise, I'm going to go real quick. So what's not written in front of us is that it's actually 2.72% this year increase, where we're doing 2.75% increase in the general rate. So the fear that people did have that it was going to be much higher, we were under it this year. I do have concerns about next year, given that the levies for what's it called at the landfills essentially are going up extremely, not because of us, but because of other levels of government telling us they have to. And that's one of the reasons I'm okay with it not having a cap on it, because it's going to be several years to kind of get the system through the state government, all these 4 streams of waste evened out. And I am a fan of the waste charge initially, how it's leveled out, because the people who live in apartments pay a lot less, and that means with the less, they were probably paying less for their waste when it's all rolled into one. And the people with the houses were paying enormous amounts of money for their waste, and it's leveled out to be a little bit more about sameness across it. And then it had effects on the general rate. So that's a decision gone, but I think it's been a good one for this term of council as well. So I will be supporting this tonight in entirety, and I think that the small increases are appropriate. Thank you. Anybody else speaking to it? No? Do you want to close, Councillor Crawford?
I will make notice that without this waste charge for the people who live in single dwelling unit blocks, their rates would have gone up substantially more, and I have spoken to multiple people who saw their rates go down last year, and that was mainly due to the separation of the waste charge. The other thing is that, so happy if you're going to want to vote against it, because it'll increase the rates for that particular group of people you're so passionate about, but the other thing is that I'm very happy to support this because with multi-unit dwellings who have only recently got FOGO, there is a long way to go with education and contamination. And I do think that part of, using the separation starts getting people to think about it a bit more, and we can use it to try and change behaviour by having this particular tool in our kit.
Thank you. Let's go to we got 2 votes here. So the first vote is going to be 7.3. Sorry, I'm reading that back. 3.7 and then included 3.7.1 and 3.7.2. That's the vote first. So all those in favour? Or all those against? All right. That's tied. So I'll do the mayor casting vote based on what's going to guide me tonight. I think how Councillor Baxter, who's not here tonight, would have voted. So I'll be voting again in favour. So that's 5 for the item, and that's carried. All right. Going on to the next vote is 3.7.3 through 3.7.7. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Sorry. Good on the minutes? Everything's caught up? Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right, now we're on to part 6. This has 1 vote. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers in relation to this part? No? Who would like to move this? Councillor Martin, who would like to second? Councillor Crawford? Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to it?
Very briefly, our high street traders do a fantastic job, and these business precinct special rates enable them to do that great job. Those of us down in Port Melbourne see the amazing job the Bay Street traders do, as do Carlisle Street as do Fitzroy Street and Athens Street. Now that Carlisle Street is on board, I'm sure that things will be even better. We need to set dates for payments, so 3.9 is, I believe, a no-brainer for us all. We have to collect the fire services levy under 3.10, and last but not least, there needs to be some way of levying a penalty if the rate's not paid. So 3.11 covers that. So only to please to move this particular section of the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford doesn't need to speak to it. Any other councillors speaking to the item? No. All right, let's go to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. All right, on to part 7. Now, part 7 will have 3 or 4 votes, depending on if anybody's bringing in additional items. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers in relation to this part? Councillor Pearl?
Yeah, just on 3.14.2,
Yep.
South Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. Could the officers just give some background in terms of the discussions we've had since the last budget meetings with the orchestra themselves, what their level of acceptance and agreement is, and whether or not we've, obviously you'll say we've come to an equitable arrangement in terms of your recommendation, but what's the view and opinion of the orchestra, please?
Thank you. I'll refer to Lachlan.
Through you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for your question. So the South Melbourne Symphony Orchestra put in a budget request for the contribution to subsidising their current location, which is since the South Melbourne Town Hall was damaged and was taken offline. They've been in a facility in Richmond, so they put in a budget request. Subsequent to that, the Symphony Orchestra, we engaged with them on the potential for an alternative, which was to provide some intermittent opportunities at the St Kilda Town Hall to be able to play concerts. We engaged with the orchestra on what their preference was, and they indicated a preference for the subsidy for where they were at the moment, which is somewhere where they can both store their materials and store their instruments, and practice. So what is presented to councillors in the budget for consideration this evening aligns with their request.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. I'm looking. We have an officer's amendment. First of all, it's written up in red there. Just moving that item that used to be 3.14. It's easier for the voting. It's no change, just the placement. I'm looking for a mover. Thank you, Councillor Pearl.
Can I move in the alt motion, please?
Oh, yep.
Yeah, to add 3.14.3, Port Phillip Multi-Faith Network, what is that?
Before you go, can I just ask governance if this is the best time to add that when it comes to how we're going to vote? Well, I think he's moving but because we're going to break up the voting, I just want to get some advice real quick.
Through you, Mayor, I think Councillor Pearl's moving a motion with an amendment, which essentially becomes an alt motion. So I think in the event that was not successful, we'd revert back to the officer's recommendation anyway.
Okay, cool. I think you keep going.
Dash to provisionally allocate $13,000 in the 25-26 within the 10-year financial plan for the Port Phillip Multi-Faith Network to facilitate a Faith Communities Council of Victoria's Victorian Interfaith Networks Festival, or VINF, being held at the St Kilda Town Hall that financial year.
All right. So Councillor Pearl is moving it as part of the entire motion, but we will be voting it separately. So even if you don't support it, we'll be voting separately, okay? I will second it. So now the debate is going to start, and I would like you to speak to everything in this part, and we will be taking 4 votes. The 4 votes will break down to being 3.12 and 3.13 or 13 together. 3.14, that includes 3.14.1. Then the vote will be 3.14.2, and the fourth vote is 3.14.3. Is that clear, everybody? Since it's been a little change? Okay. Sorry, I can't see the screen, actually. Councillor Pro, are you happy with the wording? Maybe if we can scroll down. Thank you. What's the
14.3.
What's the wrong number?
It's right now.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, and seconder, I'm fine with that too. All right, Councillor Pearl.
Could I just ask a question?
Oh, sorry, yes, go ahead. Clarifying question.
Just wanted to clarify, this section relates to this year's budget. Would this item be provisional? This year's budget is this year's budget, so would this provisionally be in the long-term council plan? Where does this money actually sit in documentation? Because it wouldn't be in this year's budget. Where is it shown?
Peter?
Through you, Mayor. Tonight we are endorsing both the budget and 10-year plan. The 10-year plan provides a general direction and guidance on what we would be funding over the next 10 years. So by putting this amount in there, it would mean that it would be part of the base, and certainly part of 2025-26 budget year, we would then need to endorse that or adopt that.
Could I ask officers whether there be alternative avenues for this event to apply through our festivals fund or some other source of funding?
Lauren, can you answer that one, please?
Through you, Mayor, I'd need further information on an application to assess whether something was definitely applicable under our criteria. The thought that the event is now at the St Kilda Town Hall would certainly likely put it in contention for CDF Festivals events, as there's a lot of requirements for that particular fund to provide for academic impact to our sort of shopping precincts, and being here at the Town Hall, it would have that benefit for Carlisle Street.
Another question?
Yeah, my last question was, I think it's the Victorian Interfaith Council had nominally allocated Port Phillip hosting this year. Had officers had any contact or conversation with them before they did that? Was that something that they just because normally when you host something you apply, and I'm a bit confused as to how we've been allocated to host an event we didn't ask to host.
Lauren, are you able to answer that?
Sorry, through you, Mayor, can you just, how we've been asked
I'm just confused that we seem to have been allocated to host an event by the Interfaith Council, and yet we didn't ask to. So I'm just wanting to understand the process, if officers have any understanding, or if there's been some conversation that I've missed.
Through you, Mayor, not through my department. It might have been...
Can I ask Councillor Pearl as the chair of that network?
Yeah, sure. There is no commitment for the City of Port Phillip to host this event this financial year at all, or next financial year. There's no agreement in place, and there's no commitment in place for us to hold this event.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Because the email we've received is that it's supposed to be in Port Phillip. So do you recall?
Yes, officers have had provisional conversations with the organisation, and I can confirm there is no agreement, no commitment for us. If they've allocated something to us, that's on their fruition, but we haven't accepted. The multi-faith network, which I chair, hasn't requested us to hold it. There are some members of the multi-faith network within council that have contacts within the Victorian Council, but there is no commitment, no confirmation from us to them or them to us that we are obligated or have been awarded to hold the event this year or next year, as far as I'm aware.
Can I then ask, is this what you've moved, conditional on it only being held at St Kilda Town Hall? It's not just cash towards...
Yeah, it has to be held.
It has to be. So
Kilda
is that clear to officers as written, that that's the intent?
Yep.
You see it?
through you, Mayor, I can't quite see it, but it'd be preferable if it was explicit.
Open to suggesting of wording that would help.
Are you comfortable?
What about instead of being, what about that must be held? Would that be helpful?
If held.
Yep, that'd be fine. Thank you. Through you.
I'm fine with that as a mover.
Okay, I'm fine with that as a seconder. All right, thank you. Any further questions? Otherwise, we'll go into the debate. It's speaking about everything here, which includes the ones listed already: Elwood Park Tennis Club, South Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, and the one that has been added. Councillor Pearl, would you like to start with?
Look, there's a lot of spending in our budget. There's a lot of fantastic spending. I haven't mentioned, actually I won't mention it here. I'll do it somewhere else. But the two items I would like to speak to is 3.14.2, which is the South Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. When I went through looking at how we support clubs, the arts, sporting clubs, etc., in our city, and the Echo Centre for that matter, I got hold of some data which shocked me a little. So, and it's important to put it in context in terms of who we support versus who we don't support. Through no fault of their own, the South Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, which has been going for several decades, based out of the South Melbourne Town Hall, a big portion of their artists are part of the local community, have to shift out of the South Melbourne Town Hall, given the significant works that are going on in that town hall. And a number of my colleagues questioned why we would be providing this quantum of funding, which is not insignificant, and frankly I agree with them. We were able to bring it down substantially based on what was initially indicated, and I take it on face value from the officers that the orchestra is happy with this. But the reason I'm supportive of this is, and I know a number of you are, is it's important to support a community group that's focused on the arts that's very unique pertaining to that town hall to make sure it continues well into the future. I think it's an important community asset, but it's also important that we do support this group in an equitable fashion. And to give you a contrast, and I'm not saying this is bad in any respects, but the Port Melbourne Colts Football Club, who I love dearly, use a very large amount of land in Port Melbourne very frequently with a large community engagement. And on an hourly rate basis, we charge them $11 an hour to use those facilities and to use that ground, which is it's a fairly small amount of money given the amount of usage we put onto it. In terms of the amount of subsidy that we provide and support that we provide clubs like that, a lot of that support is invisible. People don't see it necessarily. And when we see it in the form of these requests and these type of subsidies, it can be a bit confronting when we see a $9,000 request to make sure we keep these people well sustained so they come back to our community. But I'd ask you to put it in the context of also what you don't actually see, like those direct and indirect subsidies that we provide lots of sporting clubs and lots of community societies and arts groups all over our city. So when we do see the actual direct cost of them, they seem large. But what we also don't always see is the enormous benefit they provide. So I'd strongly suggest to you that you support 14.2 to make sure we keep the orchestra strong, we compensate them duly for not having their rightful home because that's within our control, and that they come back bigger and stronger and more connected to our community. 3.14.3 is to ensure that I keep my job as chair of the Port Phillip Multi-Faith Network, in part, but it's a substantial amount of money to be committed in next year's budget. 3.12 talks about the 10-year financial plan, so this is the appropriate place that the officers have recommended that I would put this amendment because it relates to the 10-year plan. It doesn't relate to this year's budget. We're allocating $13,000 in next year's budget. Councillors, there is no more important time for us to focus on multicultural affairs and multi-faith affairs. Our community is reeling at the moment through events well outside the borders of our city, but they deeply impact a number of our faith groups and a number of our cultural groups in the city. And if you're ridgy-dig about standing up for people that believe in a faith and you stand for multiculturalism across our city and you stand against things like anti-Semitism, this is exactly the sort of way that we can support those communities. Because particularly our Jewish community and our Jewish members of the multi-faith network are hurting at the moment, and they're the main proponents of the people that are trying to push this initiative forward. It's a small amount of money in next year's budget. It doesn't impact this year's budget. The reason I've allocated it to next year's budget and it has the network support, it allows a 12-month period to make sure that this event is compliant, to make sure it fits the town hall requirements and is subject to all discounts, etc., that it can possibly get access to, but to also make sure that our council plays a role which lots of government organisations at the moment are failing to do so, and that is to bring a true multi-faith community group in our local area to our town hall. The state government can't do it. You can't get Jews, Christians, Muslims in the same room at the moment in many areas. This event is probably the only thing in the state that will actually achieve that, and it's deeply important that we hold this event for our community in the next financial year. It will make us stronger, it will make us more resilient, and I deeply ask you to support it because we need to stand up for our faith groups and we need to stand up for multiculturalism. And if you vote for that, that's exactly what you're demonstrating here this evening.
Thank you. Now, we have a little bit of an officer's amendment on 3.14 that just added the line and the 10-year financial plan there in red. Mover, are you okay with that? I'm okay as seconder. Thank you. All right, I'll speak now. Thank you to the community. This section speaks about our community engagement, and as every year you show up and you tell us what you think, and that's fantastic. I think it's right that we write to the people who, for all submissions, to make sure that we thank them, but also possibly give some feedback in other avenues, such as grants, that may be a future opportunity. I note there's many members of the Eco Centre sitting here in the crowd tonight, and I'm sure they're hoping that some more of their requests might make it up on the screen and be voted on. What we don't see in front of us here is everything that's included in the budget. So there are some great items that are being supported this year, new initiatives for the Eco Centre, and that's great. Has also come out of community engagement, etc. The next item, the Elwood Park Tennis Club, I think that helping as listed there, including matching the $25,000 that the Port Melbourne Tennis Club got, is fair and equitable. I'll be supporting that. South Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, I think it's great that we can look to give a boost to them until we can get them back in the rightful home. I would prefer to see this money be used to relocate them to another South Melbourne venue that would have also helped support that organisation and the venue. Love partnering up and finding that synergy, but to date it's not been feasible. Still hoping something like that can happen. The last item that's been added for the Port Phillip Multi-Faith, it's great to hear the network's support of this, making the long run up to the event to make it even better. It brings so many different people to the area. I fully support that we would be hosting it, but I understand in a month or something time is not necessarily ideal. Who else would like to speak to the item? Councillor Crawford?
This is sort of not discretionary funding, but where councillors get to vote on particular items. And I think for me this section is not about what's there, it's what's not there. There are some key asks that people put forward and they're not there. So I would like to say thank you to everyone that did put a submission in, and particularly to some groups whose advocacy and efforts was valiant and eloquent, but they haven't got over the line. And I'm also cognisant of the lack of any specifics for renters or for future social housing. I won't be supporting the multi-faith network section of the alt-rec for a number of reasons, although it is a trying time for particular cultures and faiths. We have a community grants and festivals program, which I sit across all of them, and there have been many groups of faith that have applied to both festivals and community grants, more than I've ever seen before, and therefore they need to go up. They need to be assessed fairly with that, and there is opportunity for them to still do so. And given that we're in the current process of doing, I'm not sure why they did not apply. So, as has been told to me on many occasions, there are funding streams, avenues, processes that council always had. So I think it would be appropriate, given that it is so far in advance. I won't be supporting that, given that I think a lot of what your concerns are, Councillor Pearl, will be addressed by some of the funding rounds that we will be announcing in the next couple of months, and deliver the same kind of community cohesiveness and connectedness across faith, cultures, and so I think there is still opportunity for this group to apply in the future. But again, I do want to say I apologise that we couldn't quite get over the line a few more items. It is a tough budget, but there are future opportunities. This budget is not the be-all and end-all. It is the guide for the year ahead, and there are other opportunities at quarterly financial updates where there may be some flexibility around different programs. So I would ask certain groups to keep heart.
Thank you. Councillor Martin?
Can I echo Councillor Crawford's comments? Again, I said at the very beginning when I moved the very, very first part of this, thank you to everyone who's made submissions, and the extreme difficulty that we as councillors and as the council officers also who have been assisting us have had in trying to cut our cloth accordingly and fit all those things that we'd like to support within, I was going to call it the salary cap, but within the rate cap. There are some things that I'm absolutely passionate about that I don't see there. So, for example, support for social housing. I'd like to see a little bit more money set aside for implementing our climate emergency action plan. But as I said, compromises needed to be made. So that's my background comment. Thank you to everyone. Nearly all of the submissions were excellent. In terms of this specific motion, as I look up here, I have to declare that as a youngster I used to play a lot of tennis at the Elwood Park Tennis Club, and I know how valuable its courts are and how much loved it is by the community. Absolutely no problem in supporting this, because without the tree root barrier it will become impossible to play tennis there. As a young child I was fortunate enough, Mum and Dad had friends who were members of the MSO, and I used to spend many Saturdays at MSO rehearsals and going to concerts. Symphony orchestra is an amazing thing, and if we can continue to support our own municipal symphony orchestra, particularly if we can get people to come to attend its performances within our city. They used to be able to do it at the South Melbourne Town Hall. If we can continue having them being able to, the orchestra itself be able to access facilities in our city, and B, to be able to perform in our city until the South Melbourne Town Hall is ready. $9,000 is not a lot of money when you consider not just the mental health of all the musicians who are involved, but of all the people who love orchestral music and who will benefit from coming along. Can I acknowledge Councillor Pearl's passion for his multi-faith network, just as I hope you acknowledge my passion for LGBTIQA and OPAC. If you go through the submissions, Councillor Pearl, you'll see that we haven't received our money. You'll see that in the 4 recommendations that OPAC have had that has been supported, all have been included in business as usual. The only one, and the ones that involve money, OPAC has been told to go away and reconsider. Similarly for LGBTIQA+, all of its recommendations that didn't involve money have been supported, but things like, and I quote, the LGBTIQA+ formal for young people, organised in partnership with Minus 18, Joy Media and Victorian Pride Centre, and our recommendation is they submit a grant application to the Cultural Development Fund for funding for this. I think the Multi-Faith Network is a brilliant organisation. I think this is a really great idea that they've come up with, but given when we were cutting our cloth, it initially didn't make the cut, along with a number of other things which are of equal merit. And given that we're actually positing something here that this council won't see through, but the next council could easily decide to withdraw funding from, reluctantly I won't be supporting 3.14.3. However, in whatever situation I am in, whether I'm a member of the next council or just a local community, I would certainly be happy to support some way of the multi-faith network getting this function up and running, but I don't think through this budget is the right way to go about doing it.
Thank you. Any other councillors speaking to the item? Councillor Nyagri?
Yeah, I think Councillor Crawford's right. There's so much that's not in this that's the sort of stuff that's really depressing. I'm personally really upset about the fact that we couldn't find it in ourselves to provide a support for renters. They're a huge portion of our community and they're doing it really tough at the moment. We talk about, passing on support for them. I've not heard of a single person whose rent went down or stayed the same because we didn't pass on the full rate increase last year. And I'd be surprised if I ever do. What I hear is time and time again. I heard a story from someone just the other day talking about we're living on St Kilda Road. They'll soon be moving out of the municipality. Their rent's gone up, I think it was 32%, they said, which made it simply unaffordable to live in the area. And there's just stories like that again and again and again. And what I was proposing to my colleagues wasn't that we start funding people's rents, as lovely as that might be, but it was to provide additional support for those people, particularly legal support, but other support. There's a number of organisations that provide that kind of assistance. I kind of worry that we we're very happy to step in when it gets to the extreme end, when people are already on the street, when they need food. But I think it sort of speaks to a sickness in our society if we're at that point, right? The number of people now who need assistance with food is actually kind of disturbing. It speaks to a system that's clearly not working very well. And I'd like to see council spend our money on the sort of intermediate steps to prevent people from getting to that stage. I think there's ways that we could have done that prudently, ways that we could have done that within the budget. Similarly, I'm concerned because this is the last budget that has social housing funding and then it falls off a cliff next year. And we've not been funding social housing for a few years on a whim. This has been a long-term investment of this council and the three councils that came before us, something that has transformed our community and made it much, much better for all people who live here. And I hope that after the council elections and the next budget, the new council finds a way to put that money back in, because I think that is sorely needed in our community. There's also obviously lots of investment that needs to happen in the climate crisis. We have so many challenges before us. And I think, look, it's not just about spending more money, it's also about how we spend it. I think, went through all the different spending and capital works, etc., with an even finer tooth comb this year. Not necessarily just reviewing them in the way I probably was a bit more generous last year, but really with a view of trying to find things to cut, trying to find things to say no to. And that's part of the reason I will definitely be saying no to 3.1, 0.4, 0.3 tonight. There are processes that a festival like this can go through. I'm happy for us to step in when we really need to. I was really happy that we found a way to do that last year with Theatre Works. I was really happy we found a way to do that earlier this year with the National Theatre, or things like the roofs on Clarendon Street. I'm disappointed that we're not going to find a way to do that with things like Temperance Hall, that we haven't found a way to provide what I think is the necessary funding for the Eco Centre going forward. I'm disappointed that we're not going to be spending, we can continue to not spend many more dollars on our libraries, which are in sorely need of investment, but that is what it is. And I will also note that this budget does include funding for things that are state government programs. So some people will say, oh, we can't go outside of our remit, that's why we shouldn't spend money on social housing. We're going to spend $500,000 next year on CCTV. That's the same amount we're going to spend next year on social housing. I think that sort of speaks to our upside-down priorities. And the following year, another $500,000 for CCTV and not a single cent for social housing. There's a lot of challenges ahead for us. And I think often the challenge going forward, as I alluded to earlier, is not going to be about saying yes. It's going to be, unfortunately, about who we have to say no to, and making sure that when we do say yes, we prioritise the things that are most important. And I think those are things around the climate emergency, around investing in our community, around supporting people like renters, rather than worrying necessarily about landlords who are sitting on empty properties. And I'm really glad that our council took that step forward tonight, because There's a real inequity when we're talking about who's doing it tough. Yes, there are certainly landlords doing it tough. That's a very different kind of tough to somebody who's potentially on the edge of becoming homeless, who might have to leave our community because they are no longer able to afford to live here. That's very different to having to pay 300 or 400% on your rates for an additional piece of land, you know. But anyway, I'll wrap it up there.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking to the item? If not, ready to go to the vote? Or Councillor Pearl, do you want to close?
Yeah, I'll just close on a couple of things. Look, just a couple of clarifications. You were right to pick me up on terms of the two areas you represent in terms of OPAC, Councillor Martin, and LGBTIQA plus committee. But last year I was referring to, and rightly so, we made enormous budget allocations under those submissions of tens of thousands of dollars in the 22-23 and the 23-24. This group hasn't asked for a cent from council or received very, very little over the time we've had it in place, and they play a very important role. They may not be as noisy as other committees, but their work is subtle and silent, but just as valuable. And this is an opportunity to recognise them. The issue, Councillor Crawford, with the grants fund is council departments can't apply for their own grants. This is not a community group, Councillor. It's not a community group. It's our own advisory body. It's the 55 community organisations that we appoint to our own committee. We can't allocate a grant to ourselves. It doesn't work that way. We need to make budget allocations. And yes, you are receiving lots of faith-based budget allocations. Not one of them is multi-faith. Not one. Okay. So there's not one grant that this council will make to bring people together. And this is the time we need to bring people together, councillors. There's been no bigger point in my 8 years on council where our community has been so targeted and so divided. And your own multi-faith committee is asking for an extraordinarily small amount of money, and you're throwing it back at them saying, no, we don't agree with your recommendation of the 55 people that we've appointed to our own committee to ask them to give us advice. They've given us very clear advice at a very sensitive time in our community's history, and we're saying, no, we don't take your recommendation. We're not going to hold a critically important event to bring our community together. Go join the back of the queue on the grants committee when you don't actually even qualify for one. It's heartless, in my view, and it's...
Of order.
That's a point of order.
That's just vexatious.
I do think you took it too far there.
Okay, a point of opinion is not a valid point of order under the local laws. I'm allowed to have an opinion that I think that this decision is heartless.
Okay, here's my point of order. Ready? Take it down a notch, please.
It's deeply concerning if we don't approve this here this evening, and I'd ask you to reconsider the position. It's a very small amount of money that our own multi-faith community is asking for to bring our community together. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go to the vote, but this one has 4 votes as I outlined before. This first vote is for 3.12 and 3.13. Clear? It's been spaced out there, so you can see the first 2 up there. All right, all those in favour? That's unanimous. Yes, unanimous. Thank you. Is that clear? Do you need me to say it again? No? Okay. This is the 13th vote, and that's unanimous. The 14th vote tonight is 3.14 with subsection 3.14.1, the Elwood Park Tennis Club. All those in favour? All those against? Abstaining? Okay, that's carried. No, carried, not unanimous. Okay, now the 15th vote is for 3.14.2. This is the South Melbourne Symphony Orchestra item. Everyone ready? Paying attention? Here we go. All those in favour? Okay, all those against? All right, that's carried. All right, 16th vote is now for 3.14.3, the Port Phillip Multi-Faith Network item. All those in favour? All those against? Okay, that's division. I'm going to do the mayor's casting vote, and I'll be voting for it. Thank you. So that's carried. Okay, no, there's one more. I know I said 16, but we had the extra item, so it's on to 17 votes tonight. So now okay, catching up on the minutes. Thank you for taking the minutes. The last section, guys, let's bring it home, is part 8. So we're proposing one vote on this one. No, because it's not this budget, the budget. All right. So again, we have an officer's amendment that is clarifying the wording in 3.15 as written in red. There's no change to the budget amount for the cumulative cash surplus for 24-25. So, councillors, do you have any questions of the officers in relation to this part? No, if not, I'm looking for someone to move this. Councillor Martin, who would like to second it? I'll second it. Councillor Consolo seconding. All right, Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to it?
I won't reiterate all the other comments that I've made because I'd just be repeating myself, but I would like to say this. Firstly, a big thank you to all of the council officers who've been involved behind the scenes in preparing and analysing the submissions and putting the draft documents together. Again, this is the third time I've said this tonight, but members of the committee who participated either by making submissions or by being involved in consultations, thank you so much. We wouldn't have this document without your support. And last but not least, to the councillors who've sat here tonight and who've sat around tables and briefings and debated all these. None of us are going to walk out here with everything that we want out of the budget process, but it's been a long process. Most of the time we've been very professional in the way that we've dealt with all this. And for some of us it may well be our last budget. I think it's a good budget, and let's carry this and then we can all go home.
All right, thank you. So noting that we still have a small surplus for this financial year about to finish, so well done. This report is much bigger than what we've discussed tonight, so I recommend people can look to it for including, as listed in 316, that there are changes in delivery for portfolio, etc. And the budget, the targeted budget is around $500,000, so we're right at that for the upcoming one. Again, no new borrowings, yay. And thank you to the officers, the councillors, everybody for everything we do in a year to get to this point. I know the budget is very challenging, and but across the 4 years I do feel quite proud that we've been able to make some big impacts. Who else would like to speak to this item? Councillor Pearl?
I think you're all being a little bit too hard on yourselves in some respects in terms of not being happy with the budget. There's a lot to be happy with in many respects for everyone in this budget. And again, you're to be congratulated on the way you've managed the balance sheet in the last 4 years. And there's a lot of good things that we have done together within these budgets that you should be very, very proud of. I won't say who the Member of Parliament was, but I got a phone call from a Member of Parliament asked her, which is included in this budget. We went ahead and purchased the Australia Post site in Port Melbourne for an astonishing $38 million paid for in cold hard cash because we'd been saving our money and putting money aside for close to 7 years to buy that site. And that Member of Parliament called me up and they said, this stuff doesn't happen. I've never heard of anything like this happening in terms of any level of government not borrowing money to buy something of such lasting benefit. And you can knock buildings down and you can dismantle committees, but you can never take away parkland. And that is a huge testament that we didn't follow the lead of other governments by borrowing the money to pay for what you've bought twice and then buy infrastructure to build on top of it at twice the rate of everybody else did, and you also borrow it, so you end up paying double, and get your grandkids to pay for it. 10, 20 years, I don't know when it is, you'll all be able to go past that site in Port Melbourne and no one will remember that $38 million price tag, but they will remember that you had the foresight to save for it. They will remember that you paid for it in cash, and they will remember, hopefully, that they're not the ones paying for it whilst they're playing football, cricket, God forbid soccer or dog walking on it. But that is testament to a budget setting that we should all be very, very proud of. And yes, there's many things that we disagree on, but wholeheartedly there's some capital works items within this budget that we can all be very proud of. And I'm sure once everything calms down 5 or 10 years from now, and we're probably all gone from this place, there's a lot of things you'll drive past and watch your successive family members be involved in that you can be very, very proud of. So well done.
Excellent. Anybody else need to speak to this item? Otherwise, Councillor Martin, do you need to close? No? Let's go to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. And there being no further business, I declare the meeting closed at 8:28.